This is the all-new Community Connection. I'm your host, Jade Harrell, keeping you connected to our community. This afternoon at Better Family Life, we will experience a power lecture with Dr. UMAR Johnson. Dr. UMAR Ifatunde will be joining us, and he's with me today over the phone. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me to share this opportunity.
It is my great pleasure. So talk about the opportunity. First of all, St. Louis at this place and time has been the epicenter of a great deal of attention and dialogue.
Oh, without question, before the tragedy of Michael Brown and so many other tragedies that we've been having around the country. And I think the call, and my particular call, is for action. It's for organization, for African Americans to take their own destiny into their own hands, to not be so concerned with the presidential agenda, the congressional agenda, the legislative agenda, but let's be concerned with our agenda. African Americans are the only group of Africans in the world who have the financial wherewithal to solve our own problems, and it's time to stop begging and start putting the responsibility on our own shoulders.
Well, that's been the constant prevailing challenge, is the organization and the order. And you say that we do have the financial wherewithal, when often the cry is we need more finances in order to free ourselves.
And that's because we don't want to look critically at our own spending habits. One thing we have to focus on as a people is the state of our political economy. And by political economy, we're talking about the relationship between our political situation and our economic spending habits. Black people are known for their wastage of money. We are known for totally floundering our disposable income. We have to change that. The reason we're constantly saying we need money to do things is because we don't want to take a serious and critical look at our own dysfunctional spending habits.
Well, dysfunction often comes from a source. There's something that predicated another thing. There's always the first. If we take a good look at that dysfunction, Dr. Johnson, how would you explain why that happens? Seemingly intelligent, capable, vibrant people. We've solved a tremendous amount of the world's problems and issues. Why then is this such a challenge for us?
One of the factors goes back to slavery.
Okay.
Slavery still haunts African-American people. And the reason it still haunts African-American people is because when the period of enslavement was over, we never went through a period of healing. So slavery taught us how to act dysfunctionally. We worked against our own best interests. We were totally negligent of our own affairs because we were forced to be that way. Those were habits that were inculcated in us for more than 2.5 centuries. After that type of conditioning, you just don't automatically get set free and start with a brand new personality, a brand new set of habits. And because during slavery we were not allowed to take our destiny into our own hands, many of us still don't find it natural to be responsible for our own destiny. And as a result of that, most of us only live for the day, for the week, for next year, or for our own lifetime, never once thinking about how our spending habits and our political behavior is going to affect our great-grandchildren. So one of it is the legacy of slavery. That's one factor. Another factor is the lack of economic discipline because we've never been held accountable for our spending habits from within. If you think about it, we've been held accountable for our religious habits. We've been even held accountable for our voting behavior, but we've rarely been held accountable for our economic behavior. Even if you look at the black church, who we hemorrhage millions to every weekend in America, the black church has never given an accounting to black people with exactly what it has been doing with our money.
Mm-hmm. So with it not being natural, and I understand that if it's not a normal environment, if it's not a normal process, if these things aren't normal, how do we change the lens now then to see things better, clearer, more accurately?
Number one, we have to educate the children. One of the biggest failures of education in America for our children, I don't care if it's charter school, public school, parochial school, private school, or independent school, and that includes African-centered school. Most educational institutions, grade schools, are not teaching African-American children the laws of money. We are not being taught how to be economically savvy and economically responsible. We're not taught how to do our own taxes in school. We're not taught how to invest. We're not taught all the different options you have towards saving your money. We have been kept financially illiterate, and that illiteracy has been reaped upon us, whether we have a bachelor's degree, master's degree, or doctorate degree. We have been shielded from the economic opportunities that exist in this country, and it's time that education for black children include an entrepreneurial, economic-based education.
That makes perfect sense. So if we talk about then the economic opportunity, then we also have to look at, and I love that you put in the part about entrepreneurism. Now, many folks are looking for jobs. Can you speak on that?
Oh, yes, indeed. A black person looking for a job is a black person looking for failure. And the reason I'm saying that is not only because we have the highest unemployment rate in the country. In fact, black men in most major cities, including St. Louis, have been at a 50% unemployment rate since 1980. How does an entire population get held steady in check with a 50% unemployment rate for that long? It's because something is being done special to keep it that way. And even women, although they do a little bit better than the brothers, a lot of black women are still struggling. And the reason this is happening is that the American social order, through its propaganda machine, has encouraged black people to believe that you can do better economically with a college degree. And so what we've been doing is sending all of our children to college, hoping that college will provide them with the opportunity they need, only to find out after they're done that they can't even find a job. There's over 2 million African Americans in this country with master's and doctorate degrees who cannot find work. I got an email from a brother who's an attorney just last week who's looking for a job, and he's a licensed attorney, a lawyer, and cannot find work. So clearly college does not prepare you for economic success. In fact, in many cases, college prepares you for economic failure, because when you graduate, you owe about $50,000 in student loans, and yet you can't even find a job to pay them back.
And then as we're talking about this commentary, nor do you know what to do to attain it, to manage it, or to eliminate it with the current loaning.
We have to move from civil right to civil right, from political empowerment to economic empowerment. If black people are going to be saved, they're going to be saved by themselves, and they're going to be saved by saving their money and spending it the right way.
So then how would that tie in politically? Because if you talk about the systematic pinning down of a people, that goes back to the policies that are in place and the system that is in place. I had a chance to speak with Dr. Terrence Roberts, who was one of the Little Rock Nine, and asked him, was there hope to undo or to change the circumstances that we're in? And he felt like that we can't really undo the system that is so firmly in place. How would then we address this politically?
Exactly. Excellent question. Here's what we need to understand. Just as much as we need to be educated economically, we also have to be re-educated politically. Okay. Black people have been told some lies in this society. We've been told that you can change your reality through voting. That is absolutely nonsense. Everything black people have gotten in this country, they've gotten through struggle and organization. It's true that laws were passed, but that only came after we stood up and proved to the government that we were not going to have it any other way. And so the government simply rubber stamped the movement that black people had already created. The law only legitimized the movement. The law did not create it. We got out of slavery through organization and resistance. We got the Civil Rights Bill and Voting Rights Act through organization and resistance. And that's the same thing that we're going to have to do if we want to stop police genocide. It's the same thing we're going to have to do if we want to improve the black community. We've been taught that politics controls money. Nothing could be further from the truth, Jade. Politics doesn't control money. Money controls politics. And the reason why black people remain economically devastated, which means you're politically devastated because they go together, is because we will vote on election day. We will get out the vote, and we will vote for the black candidate or the Democratic candidate, and yet still get nothing after they get elected. You know why? Because although we voted, we did not finance the campaign. Right. It is the financier of the campaign who dictates the agenda of the candidate after he wins. If you're voting That's important. But it is not as important as being the entity that financed the campaign in the first place that made it possible for the person to win. Simply put, if we do not start financing our own candidates, if we do not start putting millions of dollars behind the governors and the mayors and the council person and the state and U.S. reps and senators, we will never see politics work for us. You have to pay to play. Politics is pay to play. And one of the reasons we need to organize our money is so we can finance these candidates so they can stay loyal to the black community.
So when we think of organization and resistance and the success of those in any of the progress that has been made, there's often a leader pinned to it. Is that necessarily true that was the case, or was it more on what our struggle was? And then how do we address that today?
Good point. Yes, there was always a leader, but we have to keep something in mind. The leader may organize or direct the struggle, but it is the masses that bring the change. So the leader can only go so far, because without the masses to support the agenda, it'll never happen. The leaders might actually be written into history, but it is the people who make the history. Now, speaking of leadership, we have to transform our conceptualization of black leadership. In other words, we have a very Eurocentric leadership paradigm in the black community that still says the leader must be a male and he must be monolithic. So he must rule by himself and he must be male. Well, that is very Eurocentric. It's not African-centered. And I personally believe that in order for this to work, in order for us to regenerate ourselves, we need leadership teams. We no longer need to have one man at the top who knows it all, makes all the decisions, and everyone else just follows. That's not going to work. We have so much intelligence, so much knowledge, so much training in the African-American community that we need leadership team. St. Louis needs to be ran by a team. And why do you need a team of elders, of men, of women, and of youth? The reason you need a team is because, first of all, 5 minds are better than one. And second of all, if the power structure wants to destabilize the movement by incarcerating or exterminating one leader, it does not matter, because we have 4, 5, 6 other leaders on this team, on this council, to replace that one person. So no one man makes the show. And so by having a leadership team, we guarantee that the leader cannot be co-opted, because he does not govern by himself. Nor
influenced, but also that there be succession as well.
Exactly. And that's another weakness, Jay, because we are the only non-white community in America that does not train their leaders. Black people are still praying for leaders. You don't pray for leaders. You make them. You grow them. You train them. You don't see Jewish Americans praying for leaders. You don't see Anglo-Saxons praying for leaders. You don't see Latinos, Arabs, East Indians praying for leaders. They build schools, community centers, and they train the children in the art of leading their people. We don't do that. We simply wait for some opportunistic leader to come and find us and declare himself the leader. How can a disorganized people choose a leader where they're not even set up right to systematically select the people they think should lead the charge? It doesn't even make sense. Disorganized people don't have leaders. They have opportunists who have assumed the leadership role.
Well, this is why I think we also need to, every time we say black people are the only ones that are doing one thing or another, we also have to look at black people are the only ones that have endured and have gone through this particular kind of oppression and enslavement and entrapment and systematic trauma. So,
which brings me to another point.
Okay.
And I totally agree with you.
Right.
Because we're the only ones to have experienced what we have experienced, that means we need to stop championing the multicultural agenda. We do not fit within the multicultural agenda. Latinos have not been systematically dehumanized. Arabs have not been considered less to be people. East Indians were not forced to come to America on their own. No other non-white group culture or ethnicity in this country has experienced the systematic degradation, marginalization, and oppression of African Americans, which is why it makes me pull my hair out that we are the main ones out here championing a multicultural agenda, which is only designed to distract people from the unique nature of racism against blacks in America and divert resources that should be for black people to Latinos, Arabs, Asians, and East Indians. We have to speak for a black agenda. Multiculturalism is a trap, and if we keep it up, we will realize that all the other ethnicities got more than we did from our own struggle because we're afraid to stand up and declare that I'm speaking for black people and black people only. Not because I dislike no one else, but my situation is so unique that it has nothing in common with the rest of you. And to blend this with your struggle would be to diminish the value and the importance and the uniqueness of my people's history in this country.
Oh, I am so honored because you are a historian. I've learned so much from you over the years. I did check out Hidden Colors every episode, and I've been looking and absorbing as much knowledge as I can from you. As we talk about having nothing in common with other cultures, and as well as addressing the organization, the need for this organization, where is then our commonality? Maybe in the 60s it was because we just moved past a certain point in our struggle. So then it was fresh. It was unified. We're so scattered and varied now. Here I am, a mother of 5, 45 years old, college educated, and still searching, looking for where is that common line. I want this for my people. I want them to be strengthened, but we're so disconnected and so varied and so many multiple layers just within us. How then can we find that fit and then also begin to organize?
Couple of issues with that. Number one, too many black people, Jade, don't want to be black. And I hate to say it, but too many of us don't want to identify or be counted or associated with anything black.
Well, I mean, there's been a good job at making that a bad press.
Exactly. Exactly. I look at all of the college graduates coming out of school now, who are, many of them have lost their sense of culture and heritage, and they're trying to distance themselves from anything that is African or African American. People who are ashamed to exist don't have a right to exist. People who are ashamed to exist don't have a right to exist. I was watching the other day on TV. There's a Latino boxer, a young lady from Puerto Rico, I believe. She's very good. I think she's headed to the Olympics. And her coach was being interviewed. And the first thing her coach said was, I never want her to forget her Latino heritage. That's the first thing he said. When's the last time you seen a black coach say that about black children? I want my students to remember their African or African-American heritage. We're the total opposite. Whereas other coaches want their children to be proud and remember where they come from, we want them to forget about it and just blend themselves into the so-called American pie and this American dream and this so-called multicultural agenda. So number one, too many of us don't want to be what we are for us to get something done. Number two, black people don't want to organize their spending habits. See, we don't want to really make change, because to really make change, you have to scrutinize the way you spend, and you have to be willing to hold up your spending habits to the black public to determine whether or not you're truly using your money to help black people. For example, some churches will not let you join unless they see your tax return. They're going to tell you exactly how much money you're going to donate to this cause. Now, I don't agree with that, because churches don't do anything for the larger black community most of the time. But for the black grassroots movement, I totally believe that we're going to have to get to a point of seriousness and sophistication where if you really claim to be about this struggle, there will be a panel that will confidentially review your tax returns to determine how much money you're going to be obligated to give to the struggle. We are not serious about change until we're willing to put our money where our mouth is. See, it's easy to say I'm black and I'm proud. It's easy to go to Black History Month programs. It's easy to celebrate Kwanzaa. It's easy to lock our hair and assume an African name. But when people start talking about financing the revolution, a lot of the so-called black radicals will disappear from the scene, Jay, because they're not as committed to change as they think they are.
That's a powerful statement. Now, you mentioned coaches. So goes teachers, parents, people in politics or, across the gamut, but we've been sold one story.
Yes.
Dr. Johnson, we've been sold one story that, frankly, isn't the most desirable. But you know what? Let me just counter that, because as I was speaking it out loud, truth came and got me too. I don't think that the Jewish people are proud of the Holocaust and what happened to their people through that, but they still have found and maintain a sense of unity and pride and hope and strength in one another. We've got a lot of damage, a lot of baggage, and I think that it wouldn't take very much to embrace who we are if we can find that collective joy and pride and unity that I feel should exist. But we don't even have a starting point, a launching point in some cases.
And you know why, Jay? Because most of us identify with something else that we consider to be more important than our blackness. The Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey said that we should practice race first, which is what every other culture practices. Being black is more important than being Christian. It is more important than being Muslim. It is more important than being a Kappa or an AKA. It's more important than being a Mason or Eastern Star. It's more important than being a psychologist or an educator or a Democrat or a Republican. Your blackness is the only identity you have that was chosen by God. Everything we belong to, Jade, we chose it. You chose to be Christian. You could give it up tomorrow. You chose to be Muslim. You could give it up tomorrow. But being an African, being an African American is something that was chosen by the Most High. You had no control over what cultural group you would be born into. That is our God-given identity. And that should be the main identity that we use. The reason we get pulled in 50 million directions, Jade, is because we don't identify with that blackness. You see, being a Democrat is more important. Being a Muslim is more important. Being a Christian is more important. And so because we don't share a common identity that we choose as priority, all these other things serve to pull us apart from each other and drag us away until we can come together and say, look, we are all black, and that is going to be the primary identity that we share. For example, Jay, you look at the Asian community. Okay, they have very different religions. I know. I was raised Muslim. There's Muslim Chinese. There's Christian Chinese. There's Chinese and the Jehovah's Witnesses. There's Chinese Republicans, Chinese Democrats. There's Chinese Buddhists. Every culture is diverse. But guess what they share? A respect for their Chinese identity that supersedes anything they belong to. You look at white people. You have Italians, you have Irish, you have European Jew, you have Anglo-Saxon. They disagree. They belong to different entities and religions. But when it comes to what's in the best interest of white people, they can sit down at the table and talk about what's in the best interest of the collective and leave everything else for later. Black people are the total opposite, Jade. Marcus Garvey said that we were cursed with petty differences. We fight over the most frivolous and insignificant issues. When you look at what serves to keep us apart, it's totally superficial, which is why I always teach this. Until we hate oppression more than each other, we will never change. We have to hate oppression more than ourselves in order for us to do something.
Sure. Therein lies that challenge. So I also bring that to the question of self-concept, self-identity, and really what that belongs to. I love that you said that's the only thing that you cannot choose. That is something that I will pass along to my children as we talk about the children. And I'd love for you to share a little bit. And how much time do I have with you?
I'm good.
Oh, give thanks. As we talk about our children, I want you to also share about your school and the idea. But we're talking about what our image is, what our identity is. Describe, paint the picture for, because I do feel like in addition to the numerous damage and baggage that we're carrying, we've got a whole sector of us that don't even know what they don't know.
Exactly.
So I'd like to take this opportunity for you to paint the picture. What does this identity look like, and how is it shaped and formed and moves and thrives?
Here's the thing.
If we were
we got to paint. Oh, I'm sorry, Jay.
No, that's me. I got excited.
We got to paint the picture. Black people need to understand just how devastatingly poor the state of education is for black children. Only 1 out of every 4 black boys will graduate from high school in this country. Only 3 out of every black baby boys born in this country will ever see the inside of a college. Half of all black boys in this country will be referred, and most of them classified and placed in special education classes, primarily for mental retardation, which a lot of them don't have, learning disabilities, which a lot of them don't have, emotional disturbances, which a lot of them don't have, and ADHD, ain't no daddy at home disorder. And so we got to realize how dismal this is, Jay, not to mention the psychiatric medications that they're pushing on our boys so heavily that the school is more of a clinic and a hospital than a school. The only thing a black boy is guaranteed to get in school today is put in special ed, suspended, expelled, and put on dope. That's the only guarantee. You're clearly not guaranteed a diploma with a 25% graduation rate. So what I propose, and I'm going to talk about this tomorrow as well, so I want all your parents to come out because school has just started. School just started. And I know you got a lot of parents out there who are already going through situations where the kids are being suspended too much, or they want them tested for learning disabilities, or they want them put on drugs or thrown in discipline school. So tomorrow will be a teach-in for our parents. So please come on out, 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, 5415 Page Boulevard. It's a 4 to 7 program. Doors open at 3. Please come on out. Now, at the Frederick Douglass and Marcus Garvey Academy, Jay, we're going to teach 6 key sciences. Number 1 is going to be agricultural and agronomical science. We want our children to be able to raise their own food, to grow their own crops. You do not get a diploma from our school if you cannot sustain life through your own vegetation system. That's going to be required. Why? Because so many black people are dying from diet-related preventable food illnesses, the diabetes, the heart disease, the cancer, the stroke, all coming from what we put in our bodies. So there could be no education. There could be no culture without agriculture. So that's the first science. Second science, political and military education, which basically means that we want to teach our children the art of self-defense, hoping that they never have to use it, but prepared that they can if they need to. And political science, Jay, means we want them to understand the world that they live in. Yes. We want them to understand politics. We want them to understand what's going on across the global landscape. We want them to be contemporarily educated. And then there will be dietary science and nutritional science to teach our children how to cure the human body without Western pharmaceuticals. You don't always need an aspirin. You don't always need this. You don't always need that. There's herbs, there's plants, there's fruits, there's vegetables, and there's certain types of foods that our ancestors have used for generations to heal the body. And then there will be one of the most important sciences, not that they all are not, but that is the economic science, Jade. We're going to teach your children how to do their own taxes by the time they finish the 9th grade. They will have their own business plan by the time they finish the 10th grade. They will also know how to invest in stock. They will have their own stock portfolio by the time they finish the 11th grade, and they will have mastered the real estate market in their native state by the time they graduate from the 12th grade. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because there are no jobs. We're doing this because college doesn't guarantee you anything but a life of debt to the bankers. So we want to make sure our young people graduate and are able to make a living on their own through entrepreneurial science. We're also going to teach them the science of the black family, how to treat a woman, how to treat a man, how to build a family, how to keep it together. So these are the core sciences, and of course, spiritual science. We're going to teach them the spirituality, the ancient spirituality of African people, so they will always have that to fall on if they choose not to participate in a major world religion. So it's a revolutionary curriculum, the Frederick Douglass Marcus Garvey Academy, and I'm hoping your listeners help us
Absolutely.
to raise the money by going to GoFundMe.com/Dr. Umar and make a donation. GoFundMe.com/DRUMAR.
These are the makings of a powerful, solid, sustainable civilization. Where would the children exist therein? Is this they would leave from school and then reintegrate into the world that they come from, come and maybe spread this movement even broader to create this leadership team across this nation? Where would a community like this exist beyond those walls?
We're trying, for the school, we're trying to acquire the historically black college, St. Paul's College in Lawrenceville, Virginia, which closed down a couple years ago.
I saw it. It was beautiful. Yeah, it was beautiful on your promotion. Yes,
and that's what we're hoping. And we will not seclude the children. So they will participate in the world around them. They will have an opportunity to mix with children of every single culture. In fact, I will not be able to exclude any culture. That's illegal. So we may even end up with a few children of other cultures if their parents are consistent with the curriculum, because we're not going to modify that. But you know, they will not be secluded. They will be taught about the world. They will experience the world. They will interact with their world because they have to live in the world. So secluding them isn't going to benefit them. It doesn't make sense to take them up out of a situation that they're going to have to learn to exist in. However, we need to separate them to the extent necessary to get their focus so they can stay focused on the educational paradigm that we're going to have. So some people have asked me, is it necessary that the children come to the school? Why must it be residential? The reason I want it to be residential, Jay, primarily three reasons. Number one, a lot of our children live in homes, okay, but not families. A lot of them are raising themselves. Parents have all types of issues, domestic abuse, drug addiction, sexual abuse. A lot of our kids are catching holy hell in the homes where they live. Some of them would love nothing better to go someplace where they can actually experience true family. That's number one. Number two, we have one of the largest foster and adoptive populations in the entire country. I would love nothing more than to have a lot of those adoptive and foster parented African-American children come to the school. And then number three, a lot of parents recognize that even if they're doing a good job with their child, living in the middle of St. Louis is a very dangerous reality for a black boy. They would love nothing more for them to get out of the city, go into the country, sit on some grass, dig in some soil, breathe some clean air, and be taught how to be a man.
It would. Now, though, that would require the opportunity for the doors to be open to all. And many of our historically black colleges and universities, and I know you've probably got a response to that, are having to close their doors. In fact, the place that you're going is having to close the door because of the financial obligation required to maintain and operate an institution like that. How can we open the doors? Now, this, and I think it probably goes back to what you said in the beginning, in organizing our finances and where our priorities are economically, that we would be investing in our children, and then making sure that that opportunity would be there for all those children. But how do you address and create a way to be sure to fill that need for the children that are coming from the households and that are coming from environments that have the parents that would need a home?
That's a good question. I actually was a keynote speaker 2 nights ago at South Carolina State University in Orangeburg, and we had a very powerful program. I was brought in by the Black Male Project there, sold out event, nearly 1,000 people, but nonetheless, it was free, but it was a standing room only.
Right.
Nonetheless, the black colleges, Jade, are having a lot of issues for the same reasons that we as black people have a lot of issues. Number one, the leadership, not the present leadership, but the past leadership, the leadership in many of these institutions that is responsible for the economic deterioration of these institutions, that's where the fault was made. We don't do a good job of choosing the right people to lead. And when they do lead, a lot of these people don't have an emotional commitment to the college. If you're going to lead a black institution, you must have an emotional commitment. It just cannot be professional. That's not enough. I need to know that your heart is in this. And a lot of presidents of HBCUs have done it more for prestige and glamour than for the people. Same thing we've seen with black leadership as a whole. In addition to that, for black people to have $1 trillion economy, Jade, it makes no sense for any of these black colleges to have to shut down. Black people have not been doing their due diligence to keep them open. And I'm afraid because I see so many of them closing down and so many others that are being slated to be closed down. I was even told at South Carolina State that they were not even supposed to make it this year.
Wow.
You see, so many schools have been shut. Cheney is in trouble. Wilberforce is in trouble. Central is in trouble. I mean, at least half of the black colleges, Jay, are either set to be closed or set to be conquered and colonized and taken over by the predominantly white institution that is closest to them geographically. So we also have to call on our rich black population. We have to. Of course, it's not their responsibility to bail black America out of our crisis. That's true. But if you're a billionaire, if you're a millionaire, it won't hurt you to throw a couple $1 million at an HBCU to keep it open. We have over 500 financially comfortable millionaires and billionaires in this country, Jay, all of whom could organize and get together and say, hey, guys, why don't we all just chip in $1 million a year?
Yeah.
Okay, Puff Daddy, you went to Howard. How about you sponsor Howard? Oprah, you went to Tennessee State. How about you sponsor Tennessee State? Jay-Z, you didn't go to college, but how about you taking over Cheney or Wilberforce? See, we have enough rich black folk where they can write off of their taxes, Jay, to millions of dollars that can serve to keep these institutions open. And if they close, we're going to be in bigger trouble than what we are in now, because the HBCUs are responsible for supplying 25% of America's workforce. 25% of the black folks who have college degrees come from HBCUs. And when we talk about law, when we talk about psychology, when we talk about medicine, you're talking at least half of the black doctors in this country are coming from places like Howard University Medical and Meharry College. So we cannot let this happen, because it will destroy the black middle class if these black colleges close down.
Absolutely. And but in addition to that, and I'm a Hampton grad, in addition to that, the attendance has diminished. So then I go back
to why?
Right. Why, I don't see all these sciences. Yes. I'm looking at what you're going to offer.
Predominantly white institutions have increased their recruitment of black students.
Say again?
Predominantly white institutions are recruiting black children more and more, not because they want them, but they need the money. And so black children wanting an education become a cheap source of tuition funds. Let's just call it like it is. So one thing is the PWIs are more aggressive in their recruitment. That's one. Another thing, I think African-American colleges don't do enough to recruit. I think because they are black, they really don't market themselves to black children enough. It kind of reminds me of any black business. You know how black businesses a lot of times, Jay, don't go out of their way to attract the black customer? It's like, because I'm a black business, you should just come and shop here anyway. That's not enough no more, because a lot of black people, as I said earlier, don't even want to be black. So you have to have a marketing campaign for the black dollar, just like you would if you want to attract the white dollar. And black colleges need to do better with their recruitment efforts.
So do we need to compete with that, or do we need to create a model that makes the current one obsolete?
Well, I do think the model of the black colleges has to undergo some transformation. We do know that the black colleges were created to teach black people how to fit within an American social order that we at one time thought could sustain us. We now know that America doesn't really want African Americans the way that we thought they would 150 years ago. And so we have to adjust. Black colleges have to adjust, which means every black college must require an entrepreneurial track program for all of its children. No matter what your major is, you might be education, engineering, psychology, nursing, whatever it is, you will also be taught the ethics of business, the laws of marketing, because we know that now you're going to have to make a living on your own. And black colleges now have to raise the money that help black children go into business after they graduate. I just heard a couple weeks ago, you probably heard as well, LeBron James very graciously offered up a large amount, something like $40 million to pay for children to go to college. Although I respect that, I wish LeBron would have taken that $40 million and not give it to colleges, but instead take that $40 million and give out entrepreneurial grants to African American children. To, if you graduate from college, you get a $500,000 entrepreneurial grant. We need jobs. We don't need college.
It's powerful that you've risen to be one of the most sought after lecturers and speakers in this time, and you certainly stand out among others tremendously. How are you drawing strength for you and creating succession for you and longevity? How are you maintaining to continue this leadership?
I am constantly trying to renew myself, to learn more, to grow more. I've become increasingly more spiritual, and I'm going to have to become even more spiritual, because being a student of history and being an admirer of so many of our great sheroes and heroes, I understand what the ultimate result of my works can be for me personally. So I have to constantly meditate and keep myself focused on my destiny and not be concerned with that which may surround me or which may ultimately be my destiny. You know, so My thing is,
wait a minute. What do you mean that might ultimately? What do you mean? What might ultimately be your destiny? That you become a target too?
When you do this work for Black people, and when you do it unapologetically, you recognize that certain forces will be brought to bear against you. We know the lesson of Medgar Evers, Dr. King, and Malcolm X also well. We know what happened to Marcus Garvey when he got deported. We saw what happened to Huey P. Newton when he was assassinated, and so many others who were exiled or incarcerated. We have so many freedom fighters who are still in jail now. Mumia Abu-Jamal, Sundiata Acoli, so many others who basically had their lives snatched because they stood up for the people.
Yes.
I say that to say I recognize the threat, Jay, but I'm not intimidated by it. Since I was a little kid, I thought that this was my work. I believe that I was born to do it. And I think, like with all leaders, you get a little bit of assistance from your ancestors, from the Most High. So I try to stay connected to the earth. I try to keep my life very simple because I recognize that the power structure looks for your weaknesses and use them against you. So, you know, my thing is stay well-read, stay spiritual, stay on your path, stay focused. And the toughest part of my work, to be honest with you, is to find people you can trust in your day-to-day operations. That's the toughest because when you're at this level, a lot of people who come to you, Jay, they come to you with their own selfish agenda for what they want to use you for. They don't come to you to help the people. They don't come to, you know, support the cause of the school or help you keep Black boys out of special ed or help these single mothers protect their children. They may appear to be that way, but after working with them for a year or two, you'll see that they was only in this to use your limelight to bring something to themselves so they can go into business, so they can run for office. So the toughest job, toughest job is who can I trust?
Right. And I want to take that back then to our African heritage, and as a historian and studier of our history, how did we got, so to speak, in the first place?
I'll tell you why. Our humanity, Jay, has been our greatest strength as a people, and it has been our greatest political weakness. Africa fell because we accepted outsiders as brothers and sisters, because that is African culture. We are the supreme humanitarians. There is no people in this world who has ever been as accepting, inviting, and accommodating to people they do not know than African people, and we are still that way to this day. And the problem with it, Jay, is that it's so entrenched in our culture that we don't know how to discipline it. We don't know how to hold it in check to the point that it still allows people to come in and exploit us. Look at all the inventions and skills and arts that we've given to the world. I mean, look at Black music. Black music, Jay, is America's second largest export industry, and yet we control very little of it. Soul food, you know, dance. We've given the world so much and has gotten so little because we just love to treat people like people. But we have to learn from that. If we keep on making the same mistake of accepting people as brothers and sisters without first letting them earn their right to be within our vicinity, we're going to keep on repeating this situation over and over, because most cultures, Jade, look out for themselves. They look out for themselves. Nobody's fighting for Africa but African people. Nobody's fighting for African Americans but African Americans. So we have to learn how to turn within and focus on ourselves for a change. We have always focused on everyone else. Even when you listen to NAACP leaders, urban league leaders, they always talk about what's in the best interest of all Americans, what's in the best interest of all minorities, what's in the best interest of all people of color. But that doesn't get reciprocated on us, Jay. We don't see Chinese speaking up for blacks. We don't see Latinos speaking up for blacks. East Indians, Arabs, Native Americans, they don't speak up for us. They speak for themselves, and I'm not mad. They're supposed to look out for themselves. I'm mad at us for not looking out for ourselves.
Sure. Well, we want to do better. I believe truly, with us being the people that we are, that when we know better, we do better. What would be...
I agree.
You know,
I agree.
I'm so thankful for you, brother. I'm so thankful, and I just pray peace and blessing and strength upon you. What would be your course of direction then from here? This is our starting point. Say the families come out tonight. What are you going to tell us? The very first, most important thing we should know and do today?
Definitely get organized.
With
get
whom?
Organized. One of the things that we're going to be doing tonight at Better Family Life is we're going to be signing people up to participate in the National Independent Black Parent Association, which is is a new movement that I just started to organize black parents in every school district in America, Jay. And it will also be international. I'll be going to Manchester, England, to keynote a Pan-African celebration there in 2 weeks. And we're going to be starting the parent association there because they have the same problems we have here. Special ed, ADHD, expulsion, and violence. Canada, the same thing. Central South America, even the Caribbean, the same thing. So tomorrow we'll be organizing the St. Louis chapter and, of course, the Ferguson chapter and chapters that are represented by anyone who shows up tomorrow who may not live in Ferguson or St. Louis. And that parent association will be primarily 7 committees. A special ed committee to fight against special ed fraud and abuse, too many black kids being subject to special ed who do not have disabilities. There will be a discipline committee to investigate why black boys are being suspended and expelled so much out of St. Louis schools and to prepare recommendations for the superintendent to implement to stop the removal of black boys from school, which is the single greatest reason for dropout. And then there will be a policy committee to fight against the policies in St. Louis schools that negatively and disproportionately affect our children. Okay, for example, let's say your son lives on the east side of St. Louis. Right. You want him to go to school on the west side of St. Louis. But the principal tells you he cannot approve your transfer, Jay, because you don't live in the right zip code. Well, there's no state law that says your son can't go to school on the other side of the city. That's a local policy, and policies can be changed if we organize. Right. And there will be a finance committee to investigate how St. Louis public schools are spending your tax dollars because too much of that money is being wasted and it's not going on our children. And then there will be a social committee to help our struggling parents. Homelessness is a big issue. Hunger is a big issue. We want to make sure our parents have the supports and resources that they need. And the final 2 committees is homeschooling. For parents who are homeschooling their children, we want to give them some assistance with that. And the advocacy committee to train some parents to be advocates for other parents because you should never go to a school meeting by yourself. If Jade is going to a meeting to discuss her daughter, someone needs to go with her. Right. Dr. Umar is going to go as her advocate, someone who knows the law, knows the policy to make sure your rights are not violated.
I've already utilized, there's a sister here, Dr. Aline Phillips, with 25 plus years in the system as an administrator, teacher. She knows the ins and outs, and it was invaluable to have her when we had those sessions. So I certainly agree. These are great ways to begin to rally around a point that makes it so much more pointed to organize. And then connecting with you, Dr. Umar, tell us how we can help, what you need from us, where you want us to go to be a part of and help you do what you're doing more, as well as helping ourselves.
Certainly. Folks can go to the website, drumarjohnson.com, drumarjohnson.com. They can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dr. Umar Johnson, DRUMAR Johnson. Facebook, Dr. Umar Ifatunde. I use my Yoruba last name only for Facebook, and that's IFATUNDE. But most importantly, I need them to support the fundraiser, support the effort to build America's first residential academy for black boys based on the principles of African culture and international entrepreneurship. Please go to GoFundMe.com. GoFundMe.com/Dr. Umar, DRUMAR. Don't make one donation. Come back and make another and another and another and another. But I'm really looking forward to seeing everybody tonight, 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Better Family Life, 5415. Please come. Show up early. We're expecting a packed house. Doors open up at 3 o'clock, and I'm going to talk on a little bit of everything. Everything from miseducation to the economics, the politics, the new presidential election that's coming up on us, the end of Obamaism, the need for unity, and the division in the black community. Every time I present, Jade, I just have to touch on a little bit of everything.
Yeah, you do.
Because there is no one magic bullet. There is no one solution. We're going to have to fight this war on all fronts.
Absolutely. That's a lot of territory to cover, but make sure you all get out to 5415 Page Boulevard. Doors open at 3 at the Better Family Life, right off of Page and Union. You can't miss it.
Oh, the other thing, I want to let your parents know that every Tuesday morning, I host a free Black Parent Teleconference. So let's say you got a parent and she don't know what to do. Something's going on with the school or something's going on with their child medically, and she don't really know how to handle it. Every Tuesday morning from 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., absolutely free. They can call into 857-232-0158. Again, that's 877-232-0158, and the access code is 870-864-POUND. Again, 870-864-POUND. 5 to 7 Central Time. Every Tuesday, any questions any parent has in Missouri, they can call in and get free advice.
There's so much still yet for me to learn, but I will be watching closely, listening intently, and absorbing very deeply. I thank you for making time for me today, sir.
Thank you, Queen. Always an honor.
My great pleasure. And take care.